Hey everyone, this is Jay Stein, and this is the Intelligent Investor Chart of the Week on the Devi Royale YouTube channel. And we're going to look at a fantasy football chart each week and talk about whether your favorite dynasty assets are buy, sell, or holds. And first up, we're going to talk about why I think right now is the best time to buy Kyle Pitts in dynasty fantasy football. Let's get to work. Yeah, hey guys, thanks so much for watching. My name is Jay Stein, and I do the Intelligent Investor series over at the Dynasty Nerds. You can find a link to my work in the comment section here for the full series. There's 12 volumes now. And basically what we're doing in that series is bringing investment concepts into the fantasy football world. And so there's lots of things to discuss, but one of those things I wanted to bring over were charts. And so we're going to look at a chart of Kyle Pitts. And this is his KTC chart, or his KeepTradeCut chart. And KeepTradeCut is it's a website that they have rankings and they have a trade calculator, and they use crowdsourcing by asking people that visit the site whether they'd keep, trade, or cut certain players. And they use all that and have an algorithm to come up with what each player's price would be from that perspective. It's basically a sentiment indicator. And so here's Kyle Pitts' chart, his KTC chart, since he entered the league. And you can see he started out around 7,000 KTC, and right now he's around 5,400 KTC. So there's a lot of lines, circles, dashes on here on this chart. So let me go through some of that stuff for you here. The red line that goes down the center, that is his average KTC price since he entered the league, and that's around 6,500 KTC. And then there's a blue dash line up above and a blue dash line below. That is plus or minus one standard deviation of this series. And so the gist of that is nearly 70% of all observations, all data points should lie within the bounds of the plus or minus one standard deviation. So on this chart, when you think about his price moving towards that lower bound, once it gets close to that lower bound, you'd imagine that it would move closer or back to its average, and vice versa. As the price chart gets higher and higher, closer to that upper bound around 7,500, you'd expect for it to bounce off and get closer to the average over time. This is sort of a mean reversion framework that we're looking at here. So some of these circles, right? This first green circle, that was my first major buying opportunity that I'd see for Kyle Pitts. That was back in October, early October of his rookie season in 2021. And that was right before he had his breakout game in week 5 against the Jets, where he had 9 receptions, 119 yards, and his first career touchdown in the NFL. Little do we know that was going to be his only career touchdown that season, but he did end the season with 1,000 yards as a tight end. That is a tremendous production for a rookie season, and you can see he was rewarded. So we're going from the green circle to that first red circle on that chart. That first red circle is right at that upper bound, that plus one standard deviation, that's 7,500 KTC. So what you would expect, and what I was sort of talking about, is as you get to that upper bound, you'd expect him to bounce off that line and come back down towards the average. And that's what happened. He bounced from 75 and went back down to about 6,500. And then you saw that happen a couple more times, back and forth, sort of oscillating through the offseason, through the draft season, into the regular season. And that last red circle, that's the start of the 2022 season. And expectations were very, very high for Kyle Pitts at this point. He was at the upper range of his price chart here at 7,500. From a fantasy points per game perspective, we didn't meet those expectations. And this was before his injury. So this had nothing to do with the injury. This was his price falling because of his performance and fantasy points per game on the field. From a fundamentals perspective, I'd say Kyle Pitts looked pretty good. From a target share perspective, from the efficiencies perspective, he looked good. It was just a function of Atlanta's offense and how they weren't passing the ball as much. And so his price, because he wasn't meeting those expectations, fell from this upper band, this 7,500, down to the lower band of 5,600. That's right where that yellow circle is. And you can see at that yellow circle that he actually crosses through this lower bound. And this is the warning sign. This is the caution This is to signal something may be afoot here. And so at this point, you need to figure out, okay, do the fundamentals align with this player? And so if things are going the wrong way, his price chart, I could see his average price drifting further and further down, and we could be in a new price regime where what happened in the past isn't necessarily as relevant in what's going on in the future. From a fundamentals perspective, I actually think that Kyle Pitts looks really good. And so I would expect that his price would revert from where we are now, sort of the lowest point in his career from a KTC perspective, back up to that average line at some point. And so that blue circle, it actually represents when I put Kyle Pitts on my top picks list for the Intelligent Fantasy Football Investor Series. That was on December 19th. His KTC at that time was around 5,200. So I not quite, but almost bottom ticked him there, almost got the very bottom. Now, if you wanted to remain cautious here, what you could do is you could wait for Kyle Pitts' price to move up above that lower -1 standard deviation, so about 5,600. If he moved up above 5,600, then I would be, that's all hands on deck. That's a huge buy, and you can this caution section of the chart that we're in, you can sort of ignore that because we're now back into where the price range should be. So from a fundamental perspective, I use PE ratios to come up with a value for these players and give them price targets. If you want to find out more about what a PE ratio is and how I value players in fantasy football, please go down to that comment section and click on that Intelligent Investor series at the Dynasty Nerds. There's a link there, so please click on it and let me know what questions you have. So from a fundamental perspective, I think he's a 16 point per game player, which is differentiated at the tight end position. And I think that he should trade at a PE of around 40, which is similar to what the PE of what a Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson is. And the calculation there is 16 points per game times a 40 PE times a 10 gets you to a 6,400 price target. So that's my price target on Kyle Pitts. I think it's 20% upside from current levels. And a big reason why I think you should be buying Kyle Pitts right now, because this is the lowest price that he's been at since he started career. So what does that mean from a trade perspective or a draft pick perspective, right? So in the series, I gave one trade idea, which was to take Dameon Pierce at a late 2023 second and to get Kyle Pitts. And even if you looked right now on KTC, that would be a balanced trade. And I think that would be a very advantageous trade for you to make in the future, because I think Kyle Pitts' price right now on KTC is about 20%, if not a little bit more, undervalued. And then from a draft pick perspective, I think he should be around a 2023 mid first. And we're not talking about Bijan here. We're not talking about in Superflex. We're not talking about the best two QBs. Even Jamar Gibbs will probably go earlier than the mid 2023 second range. So I think that's about right. When you look at what are the players you can get, the top end tier of the wide receivers of 2023, I think Kyle Pitts fits in there, and then because he's a differentiated asset at the tight end position, I think that makes him a buy. And plus, he's never traded this low from a KT perspective in his history of his chart. So right now he looks like a great buy, 20% upside. Target price is around 6,400. And that's it. If you have any questions, you can find me on Twitter at _Jason Stein. Again, there's a link to my series. We're on volume 12 of the Intelligent Fantasy Football Investor series. There's a link in the comments. So go click on the link and let me know what questions you have. And this is the Devi Royale YouTube channel. Please subscribe. And if you're not already, become a Patreon of the Devi Royale. And I really appreciate it. So thanks for listening, and see you again next week. Thanks.